All right, let's take you to the story now. The South African Federation of Trade Unions has described the unemployment rate as a major crisis in the country. It comes as International Labour Day is being observed today. Now, let's discuss this further. We're now joined via Zoom by Trevor Shaku, South African Federation of Trade Union spokesperson. Thank you so much for your time on the program. Now, the backdrop of this Workers' Day does come at a time when the country has high unemployment, soaring food prices, and energy crisis. I mean, do workers have anything to celebrate in South Africa 29 years into our democracy?
Look, when it comes to some political gains relating to the fact that today we can be able to vote, that trade unions, black trade unions and mixed race trade unions are recognized by the law in the country, but also many other advances such as Occupational Health and Safety Act and all of that. There is something to celebrate. Those are colossal victories of the strikes and the labor movement of the 1970s, of the 1980s and the 90s. However, that being said, we must acknowledge that the working class, insofar as socioeconomic conditions are concerned, many things have regressed. Looking, for instance, just at unemployment, which is sitting at an overwhelming 11 million people in the labor force of this country who cannot find employment. Two things being cause of that. One, that the economy is unable to create just those jobs, and it has created a pool of structural unemployment. And this does not surprise us because capitalism operates in that manner. In order for these capitalists to accumulate and grow their economies, grow and maximize their profits, the twin product of that particular process is unemployment. And that is the reason why we are having that more than 11 million people who cannot find employment. Two, it is because you have, for instance, centralization and concentration in the economy, which is leading to retrenchments because whenever there is acquisitions by one company to another or mergers between companies, what they usually do is to restructure their businesses, and that process of restructuring eventually leads to retrenchments. And because of that, the economy is also barren, can't create jobs for the incoming young population that is coming of working age population. So these are the structural crises which we find ourselves in under capitalism. And we have, on top of that, the crisis of workers who are poorly paid in the economy in the context of the rising cost of living, because you have 75% of workforce in this country who are earning less than 5,800 per month. And these are the problems just at the economic level, let alone education, health, security, and many others, which are affecting workers directly.
Just talking about, just the structural crisis, of course, some concerns are also talking about the widening gap of inequality. I was reminded just about the numbers today. 80% of the country's population only enjoys 20% of the country's wealth. I mean, what is your concern around that? How can we close that gap?
We think that that gap will never be closed until there are serious structural and radical reforms which are introduced. That's the first point. But we think that under capitalism, no reform will actually ever close the question of inequality because capitalism operates like that. The first premise I gave is that it is predicated on the production of commodities for extraction of profits and maximization of profits. So the accumulation process is nothing but accumulation of riches by few individuals. So the concentration not only of the enterprises in the economy through monopolization, but also concentration of wealth on the one hand, whilst impoverishing tens of millions of many of the people, not only in this country, but across the world, because you will see that the reports which were published by Oxfam not long time ago showed that 85% of the world's richest are only more than half of the population of this world. Now, that on its own shows glaringly the catastrophic nature which leads to inequality as a result of capitalism. So capitalism will always produce serious inequalities and will never close those particular inequalities if we do not deal with the system itself radically so and change it.
Trevor, let's turn our focus on unions. I mean, when you look at the past decade or so, with some of the challenges that are facing unions, I think trade unions only represent about 23% of workers today, just a little bit over 23%. Talk to us about the importance of maybe having unions collaborating to address some of the mounting challenges faced by the working class. I mean, at some point, people are asking the relevance of unions.
Yes, the unity of workers, as many leaders usually say in the trade union movement, is sacrosanct. And what do they mean by that? What they're referring to is the point that actually you are also highlighting here, because the unity of workers is sacrosanct at multifaceted levels. The first one is just for their internal cohesion and coherence, which will allow them to be able to build trade unions which are focusing on trade union education so that service to members will be improved. That's the first point. But secondly, it's externally, so that in the class struggle against capital, there will be a formidable force that will be able to force concrete concessions out both of government and of the capitalist class itself, the employers. Because at the current moment, the fragmentation of the working force is actually, of the trade unions, is actually leading to the weakness of the working class in its entirety. And this unity must not only be looked at, for instance, at the level of trade unions alone, because even trade unions alone will only fight a battle insofar as the shop floor is concerned, and there will be little gains they may make in the broader socio-economic interests of those workers. So you've got to deal with the question of unity of the working class as a whole. The three stratas of the working class, the students in campuses and universities, the workers, the organized labor in the workplaces, and the unemployed workers who are mostly conducting their struggles through civics and community organizations. Such particular unity is even required at that particular level. But of course, at the level of the shop floor, we need that quite desperately, because at the current moment, the working class has been taking batterings, and this is because of the disunity that exists amongst these trade unions. The problems of the public service sector have shown and gave us that example, where the divisions of those trade unions has led government to scot-free with successive austerity budget cuts, which have been carried out since 2020. This year and last year, they were supposed to have come together to stop that particular program, which has impoverished workers because workers' wages have not been growing in real terms. At the same time, the government has been consolidating its budget, with the public sector wage bill being the main victim of that. So indeed, trade union unity is necessary, it's necessary and immediate, but also the trade union unity with the rest of the working class formations is also important, immediately needed also.
I mean, therein lies that solution, doesn't it? Trevor, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Trevor Shaku, SAFTU spokesperson there for us.